Jaime Munguia returns to action on October 30th. It will be shown live and exclusive on DAZN against Tureano Johnson. This will be Munguia's first fight, actually his second fight this year, because he beat Gary O'Sullivan in January. So he is one of those fortunate fighters that actually gets to fight more than once, or, some fighters haven't fought at all in 2020. So a good situation there for Jaime Munguia. Now, his opponent, Tureano Johnson, is a middleweight vet. He's from Nassau, Bahamas. Shout out to the 242. Wilmara sick and all that good stuff. If you know, you know. Anyway, he's a vet from Nassau, Bahamas. He is coming off a win over Jason Quigley. And Jason Quigley was quite a prospect himself from Ireland. He's been in the ring with Sergey Derevyanchenko, who's obviously a top-level middleweight right now. He lost earlier on in his career back in 2014 to Curtis Stevens. To be fair, I think Tureano Johnson has improved a lot since that Stevens loss. But as I say, he's 36 years old. He's a vet. How much resistance can he really put up against Jaime Munguia? One of the things that has always impressed me against Jaime Munguia, just 23 years of age now, is his incredible energy levels. Now, people often don't talk about the energy levels of certain fighters as being an asset, but it really is for some guys. Like Manny Pacquiao, when he was in his prime, had insane energy levels, just way above most top-level fighters. And Jaime Munguia, he doesn't have the type of speed of Pacquiao, obviously, but in terms of energy, just the amount he's bouncing around the ring and the amount of punches he throws, and he hardly ever seems to get tired. He's got that youthful exuberance about him, Jaime Munguia. Tremendous energy. He just throws and really cranks heavy power shots and never seems to stop. So that's always impressed me about him. I like his youthful enthusiasm. A young guy. He's very ambitious. He wants to fight the best. And on paper, at least, and if you look at their fights in the ring, Jaime Munguia should beat Tureano Johnson. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout, because Johnson is a hungry fighter. Even at 36, he's still very ambitious, as I say, coming off a win over Tureano Johnson. I didn't actually see that fight, and it doesn't give much details here in terms of how the fight ended. It says Quigley cannot continue after round 9. Bout was stopped. California rules KO. So was it an injury for Jason Quigley? Was he winning the fight? Was he losing the fight? I don't know. Because as I say, Jason Quigley is quite highly regarded, and he was unbeaten at the time. And that was, last year in July. So, yeah, Tureano Johnson on a, good run of form at the moment. He was stopped by Derevyanchenko in 2017. 2018, he took that off, but he had 2 fights last year. A split decision draw over 8. I mean, that's not great form, to be honest. But then the Jason Quigley fight. So, yeah, let's see what kind of resistance he can put up against Jaime Munguia. It's happening, as I say, October 30th. Live and exclusive on DAZN. And a question I got for you guys is, what kind of impact do you think Jaime Munguia can make at middleweight? Canelo, it would seem, especially given his issues with his promoter and his broadcaster right now, he's probably never going to return to middleweight, because the older he gets, the more difficult it's going to be for him to come back down to 160. So he's probably going to be 168 and above for the rest of his time in boxing. And that leaves a vacuum to some degree for some other superstar to come in and fill that void. Now, we've still got the likes of Derevyanchenko, there's still Golovkin, but I mean, Golovkin looks like he's coming to the end of his career, doesn't he? Especially after that Derevyanchenko fight. So what young fighter can take the mantle as being the number 1 middleweight? Of course, you've got Jamal Charlo, and he's in action this weekend. I'm going to talk about that in a different video. But Jaime Munguia is surely one of the candidates to potentially become the number 1 fighter at 160 pounds. I mean, I would love to see Jaime Munguia against Jamal Charlo. I would love to see Jaime Munguia against Golovkin. And interestingly, they were actually looking to match Munguia against Golovkin a couple years ago. But maybe it was too soon for him then. I think the broadcaster or whoever it was didn't like the fight. But be that as it may, I'd love to see Jaime Munguia against, as I say, Charlo. Still like to see him against Golovkin. I like to see him against Derevyanchenko and several others. How far do you think Munguia can go? Can he establish himself as the best at 160? Can he beat those guys? Are people maybe underestimating him a little bit? Because people haven't been impressed with some of his performances. So he stopped Gary O'Sullivan in 11 rounds. This was the same Gary O'Sullivan who got blown out in 1 round by David Lemieux. Right? He had this fight, a majority decision win over Dennis Hogan. Now, this was at 154, and this is partly the reason that he moved up to 160. But the Dennis Hogan fight, a lot of people feel like he was fortunate to get the decision there. There were many people who felt like he actually lost to Dennis Hogan. I remember when he fought this guy, Inoue. I mean, he was the most muscular Japanese boxer I think I've ever seen, and was really very, very crude, Inoue. I mean, he might be a tough guy and awkward and difficult to deal with, but he was extremely crude. One of the crudest boxers I've seen at championship level in a long time, Inoue. I mean, he made Deontay Wilder look sophisticated in the ring. And that's how crude Inoue was. I mean, he looked like someone who was a street fighter that they just dragged off or dragged into the boxing ring. Went the distance with Liam Smith. Again, this was somebody Canelo stopped. Burst onto the scene at world level, of course, when he won his world title against Saddam Ali. Saddam Ali was never really a 154-pounder. He did beat Miguel Cotto, obviously, who was a smaller guy moving up as well. He was never really a 154-pounder, and he was always vulnerable in terms of punch resistance. So, look, on paper, Munguia doesn't have an amazing record, but I don't know. I like him. I like his style. I like his enthusiasm. He's often in exciting fights. He's still developing. I mean, if you went back and looked at Canelo's early career, like when he fought on the Mayweather-Mosley undercard against Miguel Cotto's brother, Canelo got badly hurt in that fight. I mean, when I saw Canelo there and I was hearing all this stuff about him being this great prospect and the future of boxing, I was very skeptical when I saw him on that Mayweather-Mosley undercard, because he didn't look great against Miguel Cotto's brother at all. To me, he looked very slow. It was worrying that he was being hurt by someone like that. And yeah, it just wasn't very impressive. So a guy like Munguia, it could be a similar situation where we have to wait a few years before he really blossoms into, a real top level elite fighter. So with that being said, is it too early to be putting Munguia in against the fighters I've already talked about in this video? The Charlos and the Derevyanchenkos, the Golovkins. I personally think that out of all those guys, let's say 6 months from now, maybe a year, Golovkin is the guy they should be targeting for Munguia, because he's coming to the end. In boxing, timing is everything. He's coming to the end, and I do think that Golovkin might struggle with Munguia's youth, his enthusiasm, his work rate. He certainly struggled with Derevyanchenko's work rate. Now, Derevyanchenko is a more technical fighter than Munguia. And he's short, so he can get underneath punches, and he was hurting Golovkin to the body. So I know the styles are different. Munguia's a much bigger target, and probably not like Derevyanchenko's got an amazing defense, but he might have a better defense than Munguia. Still, I think that's the way to go for him. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you agree that they should maybe target Golovkin in 6 months or a year? Or maybe you think he should go in a different direction? Let me know, people. And also let me know about how you think the fight is going to go against Tureano Johnson. Is this just cannon fodder for Munguia, or can Johnson give him more problems than most people are expecting, especially given the fact that last year Munguia was struggling with a guy like Dennis Hogan? No disrespect to Dennis Hogan, but struggling with a guy like that, is it inconceivable that he could also struggle with Tureano Johnson? Let me know, people. It's happening. I'm out. Subscribe to G-Man Boxing. Great channel. So head on over there and click that red button. G-Man Boxing on YouTube.